Many centuries ago, in a time when much of the world was at war, India was writing poetry, solving equations and sculpting the gods. It was a civilization in bloom, the great Gupta Empire, and this is our story. So let us begin at the beginning, or as close to the beginning as we can get. This is how the Guptas began. Around the year 320 CE, a king named Chandragupta I united a region around the Ganges and declared himself the monarch of the Gupta. His capital was in the ancient city of Pataliputra, today part of modern Bihar. He was followed by his son, Samudra, a warrior who loved music and who performed many daring exploits, including fighting battles and composing poems. After him came Chandragupta II, also known as Vikramaditya, the victorious moon. Under him, the empire reached its peak, extending from the Deccan in the south to the Himalayas in the north, and it was during his reign that India's golden age blossomed. As emperors went, he was quite the patron of the arts and sciences. At his court in Ujjain, the king enjoyed music and poetry recitals, hosted debates between visiting scholars, and once assembled 8 learned men to help him write a historical account of his father's deeds. They became known as the 8 gems of the Deccan, and one of them was the court poet, the great Kalidasa, whose poetry remains some of the finest literature ever written in Sanskrit. Indeed, all of India was a beacon of learning. Throughout the Gupta period, people traveled from distant lands to study here. As the king ruled, so too did the queen. While most royal ladies of the time were kept in the palace for their own safety, Lopamudra Devi roamed freely about the kingdom. Once while traveling in disguise as a commoner, she learned of a talented young artist named Shri. Impressed by his work, the queen returned again the next day to commission a portrait of herself. When the artist had completed it, he hid away the painting, believing his creation to be too beautiful for anyone to see. Realizing the queen's keen eye, he replaced the artwork with a copy, but she spotted the switch and summoned the artist. Pleased with his talent, the queen revealed her identity and invited him to the palace. Later, Shridev became famous throughout the land as the court artist and perhaps painted portraits of the royal family as well. If so, they would have been in the style of the age. You see, the Guptas loved their art. Painting, sculpture, poetry, and drama flourished, and the language that carried all these art forms was Sanskrit, which became the elite literary language of India. Writers debated and refined its grammar, studied its phonetics, and composed new words. It was during this time that the great epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata were written down in Sanskrit. Classical Hindu philosophy flourished, and ancient Indian astronomy and mathematics were recorded in the astronomical tables of Aryabhata, the great mathematician and astronomer, lived in the 5th century. His calculations of pi and his proposal that the Earth rotates on its axis were revolutionary. In fact, centuries before Galileo, Gupta India was mapping the stars and charting their positions. These discoveries were made because of the peace and stability of the age. With wars few and far between, trade along the Silk Roads boomed, bringing wealth and prosperity to the empire. In fact, the entire 3rd millennium was a golden age, a classic example of how a stable government could bring peace, prosperity, and patronage of the arts. People could pursue knowledge without fear. Scholars sat under the shade of trees, discussing the Veda, debating philosophy and writing down their thoughts on palm leaves and birch bark. Even merchants found time to practice yoga and commune with nature. The concept of zero emerged in India. During this age, advances in surgery, medicine, and metallurgy were made. Travelers like Fashian visited from China to study Buddhism and take its teachings back home. Indian art and ideas were spreading across the continent and beyond. In the Gupta Empire, there was peace and tolerance. The great world religions of India, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, all existed side by side. In fact, the Guptas supported all of them, and in the 6th century, a new religious movement arose, the Bhakti movement, which emphasized devotion to a single god. Its followers, the bards, traveled the land singing the glory of their chosen deity. They often carried a veena, a long-necked lute, and were considered the lowest of the low. Yet King Mihirakula, a devotee of Vishnu, commissioned an exquisite bronze sculpture of one. Today, it is a masterpiece of world art. But what was this age like? What did it look like? To answer that question, we must turn to the great temples of Dayagar, the sculpture and paintings of the time, the surviving works of art. They provide a window into a lost world, a glimpse of a glorious past. They tell the story of everyday life and religious beliefs. They show us the kings and queens, the gods and the people. For example, here are the pillars of Dayagar, built by the Guptas between the 4th and 6th centuries. These ornate pillars still stand proudly in the courtyard of a ruined temple. Notice the graceful curves, the intricate details, and the sense of calm. They express the essence of classical Gupta architecture. Here are the Ajanta caves with their world-famous Buddhist frescoes. Some date back to the 2nd century BCE, and others were painted later between the 4th and 6th centuries CE during the reign of the Guptas. Altogether, there are over 1,000 square meters of paintings spread across 30 caves. The subjects vary from tales of the Buddhas, former lives, to scenes of daily life. Together, the paintings tell the story of Buddhism. Here are 2 more examples, one of a bodhisattva and one of a donor couple. The first is a bodhisattva, a being who delays enlightenment in order to help others achieve nirvana. This statue embodies compassion and grace. Notice the elegant pose, the delicate features, and the serene expression. Now this is a donor couple. The man holds a lotus flower, a symbol of purity, while the woman offers a ritual vessel. Together, they represent the ideal of harmonious family life. And finally, here are 2 great examples of Gupta sculpture, one of Vishnu and one of Hariti, the goddess of smallpox. Both were created in the 5th century CE. Each is an iconic image, both in Indian art history and world art. The first is Lord Vishnu, the preserver who lies on the cosmic ocean, dreaming of the universe. The second is Hariti, the goddess of smallpox, shown with a protruding belly and riding a donkey. She is a fierce yet compassionate deity, capable of great destruction, but also of healing. Each piece reflects the genius of the sculptors, their ability to capture the divine in stone. But why? Why did the Guptas create these magnificent works of art? What purpose did they serve? For one thing, they glorified the rulers, showing them as devotees of the gods. They also expressed religious beliefs and values. The gods and goddesses were portrayed as perfect beings, embodying the ideals of beauty and virtue. Finally, these works were meant to evoke wonder and delight. They celebrated the creative power of the human spirit. However, all good things must come to an end. The Gupta Empire declined in the mid-6th century, when nomadic invaders known as the Huns poured into India. They disrupted trade, destabilized the empire, and forced the Guptas to relocate their capital. By the middle of the 6th century, Gupta power collapsed, but its influence lived on in Southeast Asia and inspired succeeding empires. When the Gupta era ended, its wisdom did not. It lives on in numbers, in stories, in stone. So come now to the end of our journey, and let us reflect on what we have learned. We have seen how the Gupta Empire was a golden age of India. It was a time of peace, prosperity, and cultural brilliance. The Guptas were great patrons of the arts and sciences. Their empire stretched from the Deccan in the south to the Himalayas in the north. Its capital was in Pataliputra. The Guptas were succeeded by the Kushans. During this time, Sanskrit became the elite literary language of India. Writers debated and refined its grammar. Classical Hindu philosophy, the concept of zero, emerged in India. The great epics, like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, were written down. The Bhakti movement arose. Trade along the Silk Roads boomed. The concept of zero emerged in India. Advances in surgery, medicine, and metallurgy were made. So what will you take away from this lesson? What do you find most interesting about the Gupta? Will you try to learn more about this fascinating topic? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to keep learning about ancient civilizations, then click the link right here to continue your journey. Thank you for watching.